Hey everybody, welcome back to Essentials at St. Mary Magdalene. I'm Father Michael Revak, the pastor here at St. Mary Magdalene in Noonan, and I want to welcome you to our second installment of this series called Essentials, where we discuss some of the foundational things of our Christian spiritual life. Last week we talked about Lent, kind of what Lent is and what isn't. If you want, you can go back and check that video out. It'll be linked in this one for your convenience. Today we're going to be talking about the liturgical season in general, annually, sort of monthly, and even down to the weekly. How do I live a sacramental liturgical life in my own personal spirituality? Because my personal spirituality is meant to be incorporated into and really subordinated to the universal spirituality of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So how do I do that? How do I incorporate my own personal spiritual life into the overall life of the Church? Well, we have a liturgical season because even though time in the Christian worldview, it's not cyclical, it's linear. We're going from the start of creation through redemption of Jesus and then ultimately to the second coming and the end of time, unlike the sort of Greek worldview where it's always, the universe is eternal and it's always just a cycle. We nevertheless do incorporate that cyclical sort of celebration into our annual liturgical year. And so we have things like ordinal time, where we're just counting days from one feast to the next. We're not celebrating anything in particular. We call that commonly ordinary time, which is not a time of like blasé or boredom. It's a time to do ordinary work, to do the ordinary work of the Christian life. Nothing extraordinary, but nevertheless, don't we find oftentimes the most fruitfulness and the most reward in the most ordinary of things when they're done well. Then we have seasons like Easter and Christmas and Pentecost, these great celebrations throughout the course of the year. Easter and Christmas and Pentecost actually have such a high celebration that we celebrate them for 8 days, in 8 consecutive days. We call those octaves, right? So after Easter Sunday, for 7 more days, Easter Sunday being the first, to total 8 days, we celebrate that as one long day, one long celebration. Same thing with Christmas. We don't do that so much anymore, in my experience, with Pentecost, but it's there, right? Because the descent of the Holy Spirit, the birth of the church, is something we want to celebrate for 8 days. And before these great seasons, particularly particularly Christmas and Easter, we have preparatory seasons that cause us to sort of get out of the ordinary and into a mindset of preparing ourselves for the great feast. We can't just jump straight into celebration. We prepare for that. And so the church builds into the liturgical calendar, anticipating these great feasts, periods of preparation. For Christmas and that Christmas season, we have a season before it called Advent, where we sort of are waiting for the coming of the Messiah. We put ourselves in the mindset of sort of the ancient Hebrew, the ancient Jew who knows the Messiah is coming and they're waiting for him to come. Of course, this is sort of a farce because Christ has already come. We're already living in the age of Christ. But we put ourselves in that mindset to sort of renew our gratitude for the fact that Jesus did come. Right? And then having gotten our minds in that way, we can celebrate Christmas better. So Advent is all about celebrating Christmas better. Advent is for Christmas. Same thing with Lent before Easter. We have this period of preparation for the celebration of Easter. Now, while Christmas was the coming of Jesus, and so the anticipated season would reflect our anticipation for the coming of Jesus, Easter is a celebration of Christ triumphing over sin and death. And so our preparation for that season is different than it is in Advent. Our preparation in Lent for Easter is a recognition of our own sinfulness and doing penance to recognize I've sinned, I'm sorry for that, and I'm going to do some work to try to make that up and to correct that in my life, right? And so we have everybody kind of understands the sort of traditional Lent thing where we give something up. And if you want to know a little bit more about why we give something up and why we really don't give something up, you can check out that first video that we did on Lent. But that prepares our minds for the celebration of Easter, which is to say, God, who came to us at Christmas, is now died for us and risen from the dead to free us from sin and death. And I am ready to go into that celebration because I have purified and cleansed my conscience of all of my own personal sinfulness. And now I can be 100% grateful to the Lord who rises from the dead at Easter. Now, this is sort of the year-long celebration, right? But we live our lives day to day, maybe week to week, right? And so there is a way then that the church sort of invites us into the celebrating this sort of universal global picture of the celebration of the Christian life on a weekly basis. And that comes in Fridays and on Sundays. Every Sunday. And this is why the church says we've got to come to Mass on Sunday. This is the one day of the week where, as a whole Christian community throughout the world, we gather to celebrate a little Easter. Every Sunday is a little celebration of Easter, a recognition or a remembrance of Christ's triumph over death, his breaking the chains of sin, his ransoming captive Israel from the power of the devil, and directing his people to that celestial kingdom from whence he came and to which he is going to return. And so we celebrate that on Sunday. But just like during the regular year, we have to prepare ourselves in Lent to celebrate Easter, so also the church advises us or recommends to us a preparation for the little Easter that is Sunday with a little Lent that we kind of celebrate on Friday. So while Sunday takes a celebratory tone, Fridays always takes a little bit of a Lent tone, a little bit of a penitential tone. And so the question kind of is begged then in the conscience of a Christian, as I anticipate this celebration of Sunday, what am I going to do to prepare? How am I going to do a little bit of a penance on Friday? Traditionally in the church, this has universally been, every Friday had been a day of abstinence from meat, sort of changed with the implementation of the Second Vatican II and the relaxing of a lot of the Christian disciplines that, I think we're kind of seeing some deterioration. When you don't enforce standards and you relax discipline, ultimately, I think the whole kind of suffers. But nevertheless, that discipline was kind of relaxed, and we're not obligated now to give up meat every Friday during the year, only during the Fridays of Lent. But nevertheless, every Friday should be in our hearts and in our minds a day of recognition of my sinfulness, preparation for the reception of the resurrection of Jesus on Sunday. And so we do some sort of penance, whether it's giving up of that beer when you get home from work or in the evening, whether it's not having any chocolate or no coffee that day, taking a cold shower, really anything. It doesn't have to be. It could even be abstaining from meat, doing it old school. But it should be something reflective or reminiscent of that Lenten period. If we live our weeks according to the liturgical calendar, we'll find that our whole day, every individual day, is kind of saturated with the grace of Jesus given to us through the life of the church. And of course, if you're able, you can come to daily Mass, or you could pray the Liturgy of the Hours. Morning prayer and evening prayer is a good way to start. There are a lot of resources out there to teach you how to begin praying the Liturgy of the Hours, but this is a day to bring the cyclical liturgical celebration of the church into your daily life, your weekly life. You see it through the celebrations of different saints month to month, and then ultimately in that large annual cycle of Advent, Christmas, ordinal time, Lent, Easter, back to ordinal time, Pentecost, back to ordinary time, until we do it all over again, celebrating the feast of Christ, the King of the universe, ending the liturgical year and beginning with Advent week 1. This might seem kind of vague, but it is a good building block to get our minds into the idea that we are not Christians in a silo. We are not insular Christians. We are Christians within the life of the church. And to truly dive deeply into our own personal spiritual life, we have to understand and dive deeply into the current of the church's universal liturgical celebrations. I hope this was helpful to you. Thanks for joining me. If you like this content, like, subscribe, share this video. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week.